The most cinematic, beautiful footage I ever shoot is often out of focus. On purpose. My name is Nico. I've been a filmmaker for over 25 years, and I'm teaching coaches how to get cinematic content without hiring a videographer. So in the last video, I taught you about aperture, about opening up the lens, about putting sunglasses on your lens so that you can get this creamy, blurry background that looks cinematic. Now there's one thing I didn't mention, because if you create that shallow depth of field, all of a sudden it becomes very important where you put the focus. That becomes a critical part of the storytelling process with video. When everything's in focus, you point the camera and that's what you get. When you've got a shallow depth of field, you could focus on my hand right here. You could focus on my face back here. And for the monologues, we're using an autofocus lens. There are pros and cons to an autofocus lens. For something like this, where it's just me talking to my camera, well, of course, I'm gonna have a little bit of back and forth, and the camera's gonna do a pretty good job of tracking me and keeping me in focus, which is exactly what you would want in a monologue situation like this. But if you think about it, imagine the most cinematic footage you can think of. You know, slow motion, on bluffs overlooking the ocean, dramatic music, super blurry background, and then in and out of focus the subject gets. You know, maybe they're waking up from a dream, or there's just some sort of dreaminess to that focus that kind of comes in and out. So that can only be achieved by manual focus, okay? So in the origin method, I actually recommend that you shoot the monologues with autofocus, but you ask your friends and family and strangers who are filming you for 2, 5, 10 minutes, you ask them to go manual focus. So essentially when you hand them the camera, you're gonna have to show them two things. The sunglasses, the ND filter, the variable ND filter, you want them to know how they can make it easily brighter and darker. And then the focus, you want to show them how they can focus in and out. So what I recommend that they do is just feel it with their heart almost. I tell them to basically, like they're painting a picture. They want a little bit of movement, and then just don't worry about getting the focus perfect, and actually let them know that it actually looks kind of beautiful when you slowly, it's called racking focus. When you focus on something in the foreground and then you rack to the background, or vice versa. So autofocus is the camera doing its best job, and it looks kind of funky sometimes. Sometimes it misses your face, or it's searching all of a sudden and it looks jittery. So, I mean, I shot a whole monologue and half of it was completely out of focus and I didn't even realize it. So, you know, there's one of the limitations of interviewing yourself. You're gonna mess up sometimes. But that's the beauty of this process, is we're getting so much footage that if you have to throw 1 or 2 monologues in the can, that's okay. Would you waste an extra 20 or 30 minutes? That's gonna happen. Even on a film set, you're gonna have things go wrong and things that aren't usable. It's not that big of a deal. So the autofocus is what we want for these monologues, and it gets the job done 99% of the time. Conversely, manual focus is a human deciding, where am I gonna focus? Where am I gonna guide the viewer to look at and to appreciate? And how quickly am I gonna do that? It's a completely different ballgame. It's an artistic process. And you know, I come from shooting weddings. So when the bride is walking down when everyone is walking down the aisle, I'm standing there as they're walking towards me. It's kind of a hard shot to keep them in focus. And guess what inevitably happens? I lose focus. I miss it for a few seconds. Sometimes worse than others. But the way that we're shooting here in the origin method, that B-roll is all shot in 60 frames per second. And so we're gonna slow it down. So you have to remember that even if there was only 2 seconds of focus, it's essentially gonna be more than double that when we slow it down in post-production. So it doesn't matter if you miss focus here and there, as long as you catch it once in a while. If you're shooting slow motion and you're simply trying to get a beautiful few seconds of that shot, which is what I'm trying to do with the bride walking down the aisle, I'm actually not going to use in my film the entire walk down the aisle. Now, I'm shooting it with multiple angles for a wedding and blah, blah, blah. But the point is, I just need a few seconds of that moment, and I want it to look as beautiful as possible. So that's why I'm going to do the shallow depth of field, even though I know I'm risking missing the focus here and there. Here's the truth of the matter. A little bit of mistake actually adds to this aesthetic. There's something about missing the focus. There's something about the imperfection itself that creates this kind of vintage, homey, organic, beautiful look that people tend to love. So that's what I'm teaching coaches to use. We're going for a specific aesthetic here, and focus is absolutely critical to understand. Focus is a tool we're using to add to the beauty. In fact, you should tell the person who's shooting you, please sometimes go all the way out of focus and come all the way back in, just to experiment. And then when you add a little bit of movement to that, all of a sudden you're getting this beautiful imagery that's flowing, and there's something cinematic that just evokes that nostalgic feeling and those feelings, you know, that emotion that just comes through in that kind of footage. So the significance of that ability of ours to now direct the viewer to wherever we want in the frame using focus is a metaphor for filmmaking itself, which I'm going to save for another video. Right now, I want to direct you to this video where I go over the first two things you need to be thinking about when it comes to creating cinematic, premium looking content. We're actually on step 3. Go watch step 1 and 2.